Joining us now, Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning. Happy Monday.
Good morning.
Joe, Fox News obtained some emails that were allegedly sent Thursday night from Andrew McCabe's legal team to the DOJ, and they're asking for the DOJ to confirm if it is true that they heard a rumor that there was a grand jury case that they could not get any kind of indictment against Andrew McCabe. They could not get the grand jury to find probable cause to believe that he had committed any crimes, and they want the DOJ to confirm or deny that. I thought you can indict a ham sandwich, so do you think there's any truth to this?
No, this is gaming by his legal team. They're trying to influence a possible petit jury, a trial jury, by suggesting ahead of time that there's corruption in the indictment process. No, I don't believe it, and it's typical of the lawfare type conduct of his lawyers, very political, very, very worried about press. Here's the bottom line. If McCabe doesn't get indicted, then there is, in fact, a two-tiered system of justice. Whether or not he's going to be convicted is not the issue. The issue is he going to be held accountable? He should be indicted for what he did. If you're going to indict Papadopoulos and Michael Flynn, then you must indict McCabe. If McCabe does not get indicted because it is a decision by the department not to indict him, that is a terrible mistake and sets up a dual standard of justice, which we already have. We know if you're a Dem, you get off. If you're a Republican, you get indicted. This has to stop, and it has to stop now. Even if we assume that McCabe is going to get an anti-Trump, very Democratic jury in the District of Columbia, which will be predisposed to acquit him, regardless of the evidence, he should be indicted.
Why do these things take so much time? Why has he not yet been indicted?
Because you're not indicting a ham sandwich, because the indictment process is important, because it's not a political joke, because the exercise of prosecutorial power is one of the most powerful weapons in a democracy. You just don't indict people, even sleazeballs like McCabe.
Right.
You take your time. You get it right. You try to make sure you have enough evidence. And then you decide. You don't indict white-collar crime cases overnight. This is not some guy with a gun holding up a store. You have a video of it and you do it.
Right.
It is, however, I must say, taking an awful long time. And I think the sooner you indict a case like this, the better. If they don't indict, they're going to have to explain why.
You also have the Attorney General's, the Justice Department's IG report being sent to William Barr on Friday, with Catherine Herridge saying we should see the final report by the end of September, beginning of October. Do you think we'll see it that quickly?
I have no idea. All these guesses about timing. This is going through the clearance process. The report is done. We talked about this almost a month ago, that It was done and it was being circulated. It is being circulated. People have the right to comment under the law. They're going to be allowed to comment. Their comments will be taken into consideration by Mr. Horowitz, and then we'll find out about why all four FISA warrant applications under James Comey and Sally Yates and all the people at the Obama Justice Department, FBI, why all four of those warrants were sought in violation of the law. It is inconceivable to me that he will find anything else, and I'm told that he has in fact found that none of them was justified. So we'll see. Whatever it's going to take, the sooner the better. But again, at least it's in the process.
Let's talk about the big New York Times story this weekend. Brett Kavanaugh, while a student at Yale, there's a new allegation now against the justice that some of his friends pushed his genitalia into the hands of a woman at a party at Yale. The New York Times using this to shore up the earlier Deborah Ramirez allegations, saying that there was some sort of second incident where something similar had occurred. But the New York Times has since published a correction overnight indicating that the woman has no recollection of this allegation wherein she was allegedly the victim. What do you make of the so-called journalism the Times committed this weekend?
This is the Dean Baquet, Sulzberger, New York Times of the 21st century. The New York Times is a journalistic joke. It is now it is now a session of mental patients organized and what Dean Baquet calls town hall meetings, where they decide which crusade they're going to conduct without evidence. This is an insult to journalism. Every time I hear the New York Times referred to as journalist, I think of Ernie Pyle, the great World War II reporter overseas, reporting from war zones. There isn't a single reporter at the New York Times who could hold Ernie Pyle's notebook. The fact that you publish, in essence, a retraction of your idiotic story the same day that you publish it shows you how horrible the journalistic standards under Dean Baquet and Arthur Sulzberger Jr. Triple, whatever idiot descendant he is, shows you just how awful the New York Times has become. It is an embarrassment to what is left of journalism in America.
The president tweeted out that Kavanaugh should sue. It's time to stop all of this nonsense, and he should sue for libel. Do you think he has a case here? Because they did publish somewhat of a correction. Is it time for him to do this, to just stop this?
No. A Supreme Court justice doesn't need to be suing anybody. That's the last thing in the world he should be doing, and he's a very smart man. He's not going to do anything like that. I think it's wonderful for the president to tweet about it. I think it's wonderful to twitch the nose of the New York Times. I think it's wonderful to say we're going to repeal New York Times versus Sullivan when the Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin amendment to the First Amendment comes to the floor in the Senate. But in fact, Justice Kavanaugh needs to do his job. As long as the Democrats control the House of Representatives, this is what we're going to get. Threats of impeachment. Isn't this a wonderful way to govern the greatest democracy in the world? Look at what the Democrats have done when they got power. These people are crazy. The Democrats are crazy. They're almost as bad as Montgomery County.
Yeah, and they're looking to, as usual, overturn the results of the 2016 election and push for the impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that he was a Supreme Court justice, Joe, this seems like a pretty clear-cut case of libel. The authors of this piece are writing an abridged version of the reporting that they had already completed in their book, and in the book, it was the woman says that she doesn't remember this occurring to her, but they didn't include that detail in their piece yesterday. That seems like libel, no?
For a private citizen, it probably would be evidence of recklessness or purposeful management. But you know, this is the New York Times problem. They're the ones who published this. They're the ones who put out this story. It's their job to sit down with the authors of the book and say, now, is there any contrary evidence that we should report? How come they didn't ask that question? This is Dean Baquet, the executive editor of the New York Times, who has made the New York Times into something you wrap dead fish in.
Joe diGenova, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Merry Christmas.
I hope so.